final session is a panel exploring how working in the adult industry can become a pathway for personal growth, empowerment, and healing. Drawing from lived and professional experience, this conversation examines embodiment, consent, power dynamics, and emotional regulation, including how practices such as BDSM and intentional sexual expression can parallel therapeutic processes that support trauma recovery and self-acceptance. And the session is moderated by Tess Kilwein. Tess is a board-certified clinical psychologist specializing in trauma and PTSD, addiction, sexual concerns, gender-expansive care, and mental performance. Their work integrates feminist, multicultural, and liberation-focused therapy approaches, and they provide inclusive, systemic sex therapy and gender-affirming care across multiple states. So welcome Tess, and our panelists. Let me check who's with us. Josy Black and Laura Desiree.
I'm so glad to have everyone here, both our panelists and our participants tuning in today. So you heard the introduction to today's panel. I'll just give a little bit of logistical information to our participants. The panel today will involve a combination of pre-selected questions that I have designed for our panelists based on the topic and questions from the audience. So please put any questions that you have throughout the panel in the Q&A function, not in the chat, or they may not be seen by me. You're welcome to engage in the chat with others, but the Q&A function will be reserved for questions that we'll actually ask of our panelists. So how we'll do this is hopefully our couple other panelists will join us, but we're going to go ahead and start with an opportunity for each of our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. And I'll ask you to introduce yourselves and share why you're here, about to have a conversation about how adult industry work can be a space for empowerment and healing. Laura, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Thanks so much, Tess. Nice to see you, and nice to be back for this summit. I'm Laura Desiree. I've been a content creator for almost a decade now, actually just over a decade. So I'm 36 and I started at 24. So we've got over a decade. I come from a past of full service sex work and pro-dom work, both in dungeons and for outcall experiences. I'm here on this panel today, my goodness, because my dear friend Leya asked me, but it's an interesting offer to come my way. I'm trying to do less of taking an expert stance. I'm realizing I love being a part of these conversations, mainly so that I can learn from everyone else involved in them. It's been most of my life being in the adult industry, so I'm happy to talk about the ways life can flourish and the discoveries we can make. But I would not declare myself an expert. Everyone else is going to be teaching just as much as me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Laura. Let's go ahead and go over to Josy. Tell us who you are and why you're here for this conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Josy Black. I'm in the industry also as a content creator since a long time, 11 years now. Time is passing by so fast. And yes, I'm here because I love to share my experience as a content creator and also to just absorb everything that I can get here. And like Laura said, you can always learn, and I love to be here and to exchange informations with you guys.
Wonderful. We're so glad to have you both here. How I'm going to do the remainder of the questions, recognizing that everyone processes a little bit differently, is I'll put a copy of the question in the chat, both for the panelists, but more for participants too. And then I'll also ask it verbally so everyone can hear that way. So my first question for the panelists is, many people describe adult industry work as a space of vulnerability and agency. How have you yourself experienced or observed pleasure, power, or embodiment becoming a catalyst for healing or personal growth among yourself or those you may work with? And we'll go in reverse this time. So Josy, go ahead and start with us.
All right, thank you. So I would say that in the industry, you have like highs and lows. And especially in the lows, these are the moments where you have a lot of empowerment from people you work with, from colleagues, for people who've been in the industry for longer than you, with who you can share, who can help you in those situations. Like if you have friends who are in the industry, or if you have like people who are really, really close to you, especially because most of the time for me, it is that most of my friends are in the industry. It's really difficult for me, not difficult, I wouldn't say difficult, but it's really hard to manage it, to have like friends who are not in the industry, especially because you talk a lot of things that you're talking all the day has to do with your work. And because this is the work where you have to think about, you have to be in your mind to like be really creative. And that's why most of the time people you are talking with or who you're connecting with are in the industry. And that's where for me, found the empowerment from women who been through things and who learned from it and was able to share it with me. So I think this is where I found the empowerment.
Awesome. Thanks, Josy. I love a couple things you said, especially that you have to be in your mind to be creative. I think that really represents why we have these conversations about healing and personal growth, is like you have to have sort of a strong and empowered mind to be creative in this space. I also love your nod to the power of community and collaboration that's so present in the adult industry. Laura, let's go over to you. Same question.
This is a huge question. I was reading it again
I
and
start with
again,
the hard ones,
and
right?
I went, my goodness. You have to take inventory of your own personal experience when answering something like this. Uh, Entering the industry, there are many years early on of supreme excitement from your colleagues, from the fan base, from the professional jungle gym that is the adult industry and content creation. There's a lot of excitement and affirmation. But then there is that, I guess, dip into, oh my goodness, this is a job. It's going to take real work. And it's not just any kind of job, it's one that does exist within a pretty heavy tapestry of stigma in the outer public sphere. And I hate bringing attention to that because it's so unfortunate and it feels crushing to live within that at times. Everyone has a story about the reality of that stigma. So one thing that I've noticed about how personal growth comes into play in this line of work is, yes, community is so important. It is absolutely a pinnacle to remaining mentally well throughout it and flourishing. However, a lot of the times the folks that are within this industry are also extremely tapped in supplying the strength towards themselves. So, as much as we do need to depend on our community and our colleagues and have these wonderful connections that will be so saving in moments of need, having a constitution with yourself, having a foundation with yourself that can pick yourself up in those low moments and that is supplying constant self-love is beyond essential isn't a word big enough. And it's taken me years to understand the power of quite literally standing in front of my mirror and saying, I love you. I love you. I'm going to keep you safe. I love you beyond anything else, beyond the criticism, beyond the ebbs and flows of financial earnings in this space. I love you and I'm committed to keeping you well. That's just one version of the practice, but having that is what I think is the most beautiful area of growth, is that you will have to have that in order to succeed in this.
I love that so much, the concept of sort of filling your own cup first and recognizing that sometimes we're not going to be full and then we can rely on our community in that care, but you need to be your own foundation, recognizing everyone in this industry can be tapped at different times. Thanks so much for sharing. I want to acknowledge we have a couple additional panelists that are joining us. So before we get into our next questions, we'll go back and do just quick introductions for our new panelists. So thanks so much for being here, Finny. We'll start with you. If you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and share with the audience who you are, what you do, and why you are here today to have a conversation about this topic, pleasure, power, and healing in the adult industry in particular.
Hey, I'm Finny Fox. I am a content creator, male performer. Um, Sorry I'm late. Just stopping in because, oh boy, I love all of the subjects mentioned, and I also love these seminars a lot. So any opportunity I get to hop in and share insight and also gain insight from the other panelists, I'm on it.
Thanks so much for being here. And our final panelist who needs no introduction, but I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself just real quick again and why you're here for this topic in particular.
Uh, I'm Leya Tanit. I'm the CEO and founder of Pineapple Support. I've been quite involved in this summit. Stepped in yesterday as well. This was, and the dogs are going crazy now. This was an important topic for me to include in the summit because I found this space to be incredibly healing. And the people that I've met in this industry over the last 24 years to have actually provided me with the safest space that I've had. It was always a bit different. We've spoken about this before, growing up and the adult community. I'm sorry about the dogs. They're fighting in the office now. The adult community and the BDSM community was the first that really just said, we accept you for you. We don't want you to have any airs or graces or change who you are for us in any way. We want you to express yourself and we're going to support you in that journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we have similar sentiments being shared in the chat right now, how the adult community has been such an open and supportive space to, regarding sexual trauma and healing and how that looks for different people. So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. Laura, you made a wonderful comment about stigma in this industry, how everyone has experienced stigma in some way. So my next question for the panelists is, stigma itself often shapes how performers and professionals seek support, if they seek it at all, when they seek it, who from, how they seek it. So how do things like stigma, shame, societal narratives, or just misperceptions about adult work influence mental health? And what helps people reclaim their own stories? So recognizing all of my questions are like 2 3-part questions, I'll go ahead and throw it in the chat as well so everyone can see it. And as panelists are digesting that question, I just want to remind people that you can ask questions of these panelists as well, just by using the Q&A function of the Zoom chat. So we'll go ahead and start with Finny on this one, because you're our newest joinee today. How would you talk about stigma and how it influences mental health and people's ability to reclaim their own stories?
I guess on the outside looking in, it's very easy for people to hear things about the industry from various different sources. I feel like the most accessible source to people outside of the industry are people outside of the industry um, who either have a jaded view, a negative view, or a more fantasized view of what we do. And it makes people on the outside looking in a lot more susceptible to what they're being told versus doing their own research, looking at it for themselves. Because even the statement of looking at it for yourself, it's like the mental image of that is, I'm gonna go watch porn instead of like, oh, I'm just gonna go see what this is all about. But on the inside, I think it's more so um one, definitely your own experiences, your environment that you create, the people that you surround yourself with, and their experiences that you either see or share with them, um, and vice versa. At least speaking for self, I always try to motivate and encourage like my mutuals and my friends to, because I want them to have the best experiences in this industry possible. But I also understand I'm not superhuman either. So when God forbid they don't, I also want to be there just as much for them then, and support them in any way that I can.
Thanks so much. I love that. Just another message of like, take care of ourselves and take care of others so we can take care of others. Awesome. Let's go to Leya next. What would you share on this topic?
Oh, I mean, this topic is why pineapple support exists, you know. So it's, I could talk on this for hours. Stigma and shame are the key factors in the misconception of the public's opinion of this industry. And I think it boils down to shame and their shame and where that shame has come from, and shame around sex and the shame that society has put on us. I mean, a lot of it's religious, sex and female autonomy, and it's snowballed and entangled itself into something that it's become its own beast, needs to be slowly broken down. And I'm asked the question a lot, do I think that it's getting better? And it's such a loaded one, because although people are talking a lot more about the adult space, I think with that comes a lot more hate, and aggression on social media. It's by opening ourselves up to being more public, where we're also inviting a lot more negativity. I went off on a tangent there, but
No, it's perfect. And I think there's this acknowledgement of, right, there is a difficult balance between visibility and these stories deserve to be heard and this content deserves to be shared. And that opens up this world and content creators themselves to, more public scrutiny. And so that balance, I think we're constantly trying to find in this industry. So it's very real, not a tangent at all. Laura, let's go to you next. How does stigma shape kind of mental health access, and how do people reclaim their stories?
Stigma, I mean, it's so cunning. It outsmarts in these ways where, there's the very obvious version of it where maybe you're not getting certain banking support that you need with the institutions in America. Maybe you've been denied certain rights and benefits, which are horrible things. But then there's these sort of subliminal layers of stigma, and it can come in the form of maybe you're out with a group of new friends. You get introduced as someone who makes a living this way. And when the group photo happens, you're asked not to be in it, or you're cropped out of it, or you go home for the holidays. Maybe you do have a relationship with your family. And on the surface, it looks like, wow, I'm lucky to be doing this. But you realize around the table, no one's asking you about yourself. No one's asking you about your life, your passions, and what you're doing. And so this compounds into an effect that says I'm not worth these things. I'm not worth having friends that want to take a photo with me. I'm not worth having a family or a community that wants to give a damn about me. And that's dangerous. That's such a dangerous sort of a infection that can happen to mental health and mental sanity. And we have to fight against it, as we know, and that's the understatement of the year. And if I could make it light and say one immediate quick fix that has always helped me, and this is literally like the quickest fix, emergency, break the glass only in moments of emergency. You think throughout time, the number one nightmare that you hear the general public talk about, their nightmare is being seen in the public eye naked. Now, we do this, and we do this comfortably, we do this confidently. It's a fucking superpower. The fact that we can do this thing that the rest of the world deems the scariest fucking nightmare of all nightmares, and we do this with pride in who we are. Start there and realize, no, you're a superhero. You're literally, you're doing something that's superhuman.
I love that so much. And anytime we can put a positive spin on this, I think it's great, right? And so it's a good reminder for people when you maybe start to doubt that self-worth, or if you deserve to be in spaces, like you're doing a really raw and vulnerable thing at the end of the day, right? That many people are afraid of, many people have been taught to avoid altogether, right? And so I think that's a great acknowledgement. I also love the comment about how stigma is not restricted to the professional space, but can be really personal too, in our families and our partnerships, other places we might work, and that can really affect our self-worth. Josy, let's go to you next to wrap up this conversation about stigma and mental health.
Yes, I really love what Laura said. I mean, we are superheroes. I love that. And this is also the point where I want to pick up is because for me, what helps me a lot is to practice self-love. This is something that really, really helps me to just, yeah, find a balance between the stigma that really causes it's really, really difficult for your mental health, the stigma in this industry, especially when it's the family. I mean, I have this in my own family to have like difficulties and to um I don't know how to say, to experience this kind of like being pushed away, but with silence, that the way that you don't really they think you don't see it, but you see it. And it can be really painful, yes. And to just practice self-love and to be aware that we all are humans. I mean, for me, I always face the thought that those people sometimes they don't even think about their own thoughts. Is this really my thought? Am I really thinking about these people like that? I mean, this separation that I'm just creating in my own head, just thinking about, oh, these are sex workers. These are really, really weird people. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on in each people's mind, but just thinking about like if their thoughts are really the emotion that they have towards us people. Is this really what I think about these people? Or is it something that I just catch up somewhere and I just heard from somebody? Because most of the time, even with my fans, when I talk to them in private, they'd be like, oh, you're really cool. I didn't expect that you're really, really cool and you do normal things. Like, of course, I do normal things. I'm a normal human. What did you thought? So yes, practicing self-love helps me a lot. Like just taking myself out of the situation and trying to see also the other part and trying to understand how the person who's not against me, but who's like negative towards me, trying to understand this person. And maybe sometimes when I find a way to understand the way the person thinks, it's really easy for me to just change the mind of this person or change the thinking of this person. So yeah, for me it goes all back to self-love.
I love that, Josy. Thanks so much for sharing. And on that topic, I want to do something I haven't done in a panel before, but I welcome in the chat. We don't need details or stories or things like that, but attendees, if you have any examples of maybe how you've reclaimed your own story or yourself in this space, both personally or professionally, feel free to share that in the chat, because I think what's so cool is we see these panelists up here that have had a lot of success in this industry, right? And are sharing with you like, yes, I've been rejected by people in my life. I've experienced stigma. I've had these experiences too. And so to model that vulnerability, I invite you to participate with us in the chat. So at this stage, we're going to shift over to an audience question for the panelists. In an industry that likely, and yes, does demand constant visibility and almost perfection, where do you find the space to be vulnerable? So where in your own life have you actually found those spaces to kind of maybe shut off and be vulnerable yourself? We'll go ahead and go backwards-ish this time, and Laura, we'll go ahead and start with you. I always catch people off guard because I mix around the rotation.
Spaces to be vulnerable. I'm just going to go right off the cuff here. I have regular non-professional sex in my life. I have non-professional masturbatory sessions in my life. It's crucial. I want to keep my access to pleasure and the messiness and the natural responses that happen with it. Sometimes I'm going to make a face that I wouldn't make on camera or a sound that I wouldn't want heard in a clip. But I want to keep that practice alive. I also goof around a lot. So one of my favorite, I've said this, I think I said this in one of our last panels, is like I'll perform full Super Bowl halftime show lip sync concerts in my living room. Like I'm not joking. If you want to keep that sense of play and, accepting yourself in a really loose, vulnerable, icky, wonderful way, you have to keep play alive. So yeah, I'll do a lot of that, just dancing around and trying to maintain friendships that are not within the industry, but are also deeply compassionate, deeply accepting, and wonderful people that welcome that vulnerability because you need a break from the character. You really do. You need a break from the invincibility that it takes as well.
I love that. I always try and pick up on these tidbits. Keep play alive. I think that's a good takeaway from your response there. All right, let's go back to Josy then for this next one. How have you found spaces of vulnerability for yourself?
For me, it's my babies, my family, my animals. I love being in nature. I love to meditate and like to goof around also. I mean, my husband and I, we do like wrestling sessions in the living room. I mean, we're really like playing around like kids and throwing us around, and that's just amazing to just feed the inner child. This is really important for me. Yes.
Love that so much. Leya, let's go to you. How do you practice vulnerability?
I've been neglecting my inner child and play recently. Lots and lots, yeah. Focusing on work. I went out recently with a group of friends. Decided last minute I was going to go to a party, like at a beach club. And I was standing there surrounded by people. So I really enjoyed this. Why don't I do this more often? You used to. Come on. Um, but spaces for vulnerability, I think, honestly, they're quite rare for me because I feel like I have to put on a brave face, a strong persona to continue. And there's just a lot of plates spinning. And sometimes I think if you let the vulnerability out and take your eye off a plate for a moment, it can all come crashing down, which I know is completely incorrect. And therapists would be having a good old shout at me at the moment. But yeah, I think really, my space is my dogs. I love the moments when it's just quiet and it's just me and it's just them. And also my friends have kind of kitchen table sessions to come around, have a bottle of wine or a couple bottles of wine and just put the world to rights and let it all out. And that's just having that release is wonderful, but there definitely needs to be more play.
I love that because it's you up here modeling the vulnerability, right? As like the person who created the opportunity for us to even be having this conversation. You're naming that like it's tough to prioritize the play and the vulnerability. So like let this panel serve as a reminder that this is important to carve out the space for play and vulnerability and taking care of yourself personally. I think we can all use that reminder. Finny, let's wrap up with you. How do you carve out space for vulnerability?
Um, I've thought of different ways. So one thing that I started doing this year is I started working camera for my friends and my mutuals and stuff like that. Versus sometimes they'll help me with my stuff too, but like I decided I was like, okay, I want to help them out. So this is just something I do for them. It's not a service. I'm not getting paid. I get to show up like this, relaxed and be a background character while still, looking out for my peoples and stuff like that. And it's become very relaxing for me because videography is something that has always been like my main passion. And so to be able to do that and still make phenomenal content and stuff like that, but not really be clocked in is I love it. And another thing I did when I moved to Vegas, I have these weekly game nights here at my house. Um, thank you, Laura. Yeah, I have these weekly game nights here at my house. It's for the most part industry only. If you just happen to bring a plus one that's, somebody close to you, that's fine too. But every Friday we'll come here and we'll play these various different games. We got giant Jenga, there's different Unos, there's a lot of like, who done it board games and stuff like that. And that's all it is. It's like, it's just a game night. We all bring food, we hang out, we unplug. We don't make content. We don't make reels. We're not on our stories. There was, oh, we're all here together. We just get to be ourselves. We just get to be our normal, comfortable selves. And a lot of like my main mutuals come a lot, but every week there's always someone new who's either visiting or in town who comes through, and they get to experience that too. They get to just unwind and not have to worry about being this perfect entertainer that they have to be, Friday before they get to game night, and Saturday morning when they leave game night, they get that little bit of a break. And at least for me, it's become like, I want to say a necessity for me. It's home base. It's that refresh. It's that mental refresh that I need because, doing what we do, I'm clocked in all week. If I'm not performing, I'm here at the computer, I'm editing, I'm doing my own admin work and stuff like that. But Fridays, I don't want to do nothing, especially Friday nights. I look forward to it so, so much.
Such wonderful ideas, Finny. I hope people are kind of taking notes on ways that they might add to their own portfolio. But a couple of things I heard is like the helping other piece, I think is so powerful, and that a lot of people get their rejuvenation from that, is giving back to maybe their friends or their community or the industry in different ways. We've heard that a lot, I think, in Pineapple Sport, being a panelist or being part of some of the things that we provide, being a liaison, right? Like that just brings people a lot of kind of personal rejuvenation. And then diversifying your personal and professional life, trying new things, doing something different, making sure it's not kind of monotonous. I love all these examples. Wonderful question from the audience. We remind you, you are welcome to ask panelists your own questions in the Q&A function. We'll go ahead and go on to our next question that I will also put in the chat for our panelists and our audience. A lot of the reason we brought up this discussion, this panel, is around consent and communication, and how these two things are so central to the adult industry and adult work. So thinking of like what intentional sexual frameworks, I know BDSM comes to mind for a lot of people and was one topic we highlighted, but what kind of intentional sexual frameworks do you see as directly transferable to trauma recovery, emotion regulation outside of sexual context? So this is a tough one, but I'm essentially asking like what is built into the adult industry that can promote healing outside of it? What kind of ways do we reclaim consent and communication and these things that then can affect our personal life? So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. I can always re-clarify if I need to, but we'll go ahead and start with Laura on this one. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I do some work as an intimacy coordinator for a live sex show here in New York City, and a lot of the times, what I'm talking with performers about is, that you're entering a workforce that, yes, comes with an enormous amount of stigma, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, I hope you're aware of that. But along with that, you get the opportunity to develop this vocabulary that is uniquely suited to you expressing your boundaries, expressing your interests, because so much as it is about what is on my no list, it's also very often about, well, what do I like? What am I up for today? When you step on set with a scene partner, a lot of it is about not only just saying like, hey, anal's off the table today, but what would really help me get there is I actually need a really dedicated amount of kissing before we get started with some of the penetrative acts or the oral sex. So you develop this comfort in talking about sexuality and talking about your own sexuality that when you go back to having sex in the civilian world, like if you keep a healthy rotation of civilians in the game, you'll realize how limited the general public is in feeling confident when talking about their own sexuality. It's like that's something you own, that's uniquely yours. And I'm hoping that you're spending a life figuring it out and exploring it. It should be exciting to talk about this. But so many people, like I said, it's a superpower. So many people are so deeply afraid of how they'll be perceived, what kind of shunning or shaming awaits them if they own up to having a sexuality. And we are people that make a living expressing, emoting, and negotiating our sexuality. So it's like the ultimate place of flourish for me. I think it's like the ultimate boot camp for flourish.
I love that so much. So it reminds me of a quote one of my favorite dungeon leaders told me recently, but like consent is two parts. It's knowing what it is and then knowing how to ask for it. And both of those tend to be very limited in the general public, right? And what you get by kind of working in the adult industry or becoming more familiar is a higher level of education around sexual health and freedom and communication. And then this higher agency and empowerment to ask for it. And that's really what your response reflected to me. So thanks for sharing. Finny, let's go to you next. What do you think about the adult industry and the power it has in kind of promoting recovery and consent?
I think, I mean, in the position that I am as a performer, it definitely needs work. But it's also our responsibility to, do that work. So typically, depending on the type of, I'm just speaking, I guess, from performance, depending on the type of scene that you're doing, you could just be doing a vanilla scene with a co-star versus hardcore, BDSM, crazy rough stuff. The higher the level that you go, the more conversation that you need to have beforehand, sometimes during, and definitely after. Speaking for myself, my own experiences and stuff like that, I'm kind of at the lower end. My stuff is a little bit more what you would call vanilla, but you still have to have these consent conversations beforehand. Sometimes even before I do a shoot, I'll just be texting and I'll be like, hey, is there anything I need to know in advance? Do you have any hard no's? Do you have things that you like? I make sure to ask that question too. Like, are there things that you like so I can make sure that I incorporate it into the scene so it's the best experience for you possible? So having those consent and boundaries conversations beforehand. I have this habit of if I have a co-star who tells me, oh, I'm down for whatever, I never will take that for an answer. I'm like, look, we need to, okay, well, I'm going to go more specific. Just because, again, want this to be a good experience. But then also, I know some people do like, what do they call it? Like video consent, stuff like that too, where they may have like a certain script or something like that, especially when they do more like rougher content and stuff like that, which is cool too, as long as you follow it. But I think, and also a very important part about all of that is, which we tend to forget, is the during. Communication during it. And especially if you're the person who is doing most of the acts and the rougher stuff, you have to be there. You can't just get lost in the character and then after the fact you're like, oh, how was the shoot? And it was a terrible experience for them. No, you have to be perceptive. You have to pay attention. If your co-star is uncomfortable, you need to stop what you're doing and you need to check on them. You need to make sure that they are okay. Even if they are okay and you just kind of look like, oh, it might be something wrong. Hey, is everything cool? Communication, cool. Having water and stuff around just in case somebody gets tired, all that stuff. What we like to call aftercare, after the fact, helping them clean up, talking to them, consoling them, having those conversations and stuff like that is also really, really important in what we do, and trying to make sure that you yourself and your co-star, what I would say more importantly, your co-star or stars, is having a good experience so that they can they can have like those expectations moving forward, so that if they work with somebody else like after me and the person that they work with doesn't do all that, they will stop and be like, hey, can we do this? I experienced this at my last shoot and my last shoot before that. Hey, can we have certain conversations? And then I think it just continues to build. It starts to become a lot more normal like I said in the beginning, like we have to be the ones to do the work. We have to be the ones to make it a more better experience in the industry.
You said so many amazing things in there, Finny. I can't even recap, but I love so much the comment about how consent applies to both what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, right? And recognizing and challenging people to think about this directly. Think about what that actually means to you. And the before, during, and after piece, I think, is so important, right? Consent is not this kind of one-time check-in or conversation. It's about how you be present with the people that you're performing with, both in our personal and our professional lives. So just some really great things. And I think there's power in hearing this from a male presenting panelist in particular, is that these conversations based on gender are not always as powerful and present. So thank you so much. Leya, let's go to you next.
I think I want to follow on from Finny really and just talk about that discussion of what you actually enjoy, because I think, and particularly as women, we quite often thought to appease and go along with it, just smile, pretend you're having a good time, just say yes. And there are countless times, and when I was younger, that you kind of lie there and think, oh God, when's this going to be over? Or be with somebody and never have that discussion about what the sex is going to be like. And being in this industry and being in the BDSM community as well and having those conversations beforehand, what are we going to do? What are you into? What am I into? Where are we going to match? What are your levels at? How far do you want to go? What are your hard no's? And having these conversations before a sexual act happens allows both people to really explore pleasure and enjoy the act, basically. And I think that needs to be brought more into mainstream.
I love it. So again, another example of how some of these concepts in the industry can also be applicable outside of the industry. All right, Josy, let's wrap up with you, and then we'll move on to our next question.
There's nothing more to add. I mean, Leya said something really good, Laura, and I also used to work with video consent, especially beforehand and also afterwards. And every time I did the video consent, everyone, like even male or female, were surprised about the question, what do you like? It's every time the same. And sometimes I was really surprised that some of those beautiful people had to think about, like really think about. They needed like a few minutes to just think about what do I really like? What is my real turn on? Like someone is asking me on set, what do I want to enjoy? And this is something that needs to be really brought up like frequently and mainstream, like Leya said, for sure.
I love the acknowledgement that there's so much power in being the receiver of that question too. We don't always get that from people that we're working with, right? Is that they're truly asking you and interested in how you want to be present and enjoy it. So I love it. We've got about 10 minutes left before we make our adjustment to closing out. So at this point, I want to ask kind of the big question of our panelists here. So the purpose of this panel is really to encourage performers and people to recognize that pleasure, power, and healing are not competing interests. They can coexist at the same time. They can be mutual priorities in this work. So if you had one message or one takeaway for the audience on this discussion, what would that be? If there's something you've been like holding in and you're like, gosh, I really need to make sure that that gets out today, that is what we want to hear at this time. And I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat as well. We might have time to sneak in one final audience Q&A. So if you have that question, throw it in there. But for now, we'll go ahead and go backwards. So Josy, let's go ahead and start with you. What is kind of your big takeaway on this discussion?
My big takeaway on this discussion, I would say, is really, really important to just always be yourself and only do things that you really enjoy to do. This is something that I learned luckily really early, that you should only in this, especially in this industry, you should only focus on things that are not against your own person, your own values, because sometimes you get offers where you get offers where you do things that normally you wouldn't do, but the offer is so good that you'd be like, only this time. And afterwards, you regret it. Afterwards, maybe just a few months, a few years later, your mental health can get like in trouble with that. Or sometimes you'll be like, oh gosh, I need to get this out of the internet, but I can't because I signed all this paper. And then this is something, I would say this is one of the worst things when you have content out there that you feel like really, really uncomfortable with, but you can't do nothing to get this out of the internet. So always do things that you really feel comfortable with and always try to think in the future. And yeah, this is what I would say.
Think that is so beautiful and so aligned with like the therapeutic role that I provide to adult entertainers is when we're navigating questions about like who do you create content with, where does it go, how do you want to prioritize these decisions in the industry, is you want to make sure they align with your values, right? And we encourage so much making value-based decisions in this industry and to be able to think about, okay, 6 months from now, how will this sit with me? I think that's such a wonderful model for people. So thank you so much for sharing. Leya, let's go to you next. Big takeaway for you.
I think big takeaway would be that the sad fact is that a lot of people now have experienced sexual trauma. I say that it used to be 1 in 3 women would experience sexual trauma. Now I think it's 2 in 3. It's on the rise. It's horrific, but it is possible to heal, and it is possible to heal in this industry. I wouldn't say enter this industry to heal. That is not good advice. But listening to these conversations and understanding more about consent, understanding more about your body, how you feel, pay attention to what you're feeling, and that there's never going to be a quick fix to healing from trauma, and it's not going to be linear either. There's always going to be more work to be done. There's always going to be different facets that you're seeing your trauma from different angles, and it's just so important to communicate and to give yourself that space to heal and to break again and to heal again, and to give yourself grace.
Thanks so much for noting the sexual trauma piece. I think that's another big reason we had this conversation is acknowledging that lots of people have trauma experience, men, women, boys, girls, non-binary folk. Rates of sexual violence are high among all those populations and underreported in many of those populations. And the adult industry is not excluded from that. So Leya, I love so much what you said about like, this can be a place of healing, a piece of that, but don't enter solely to do that, right? It can be one piece of that healing journey for you, and it can be a really powerful one for a lot of people. So thanks so much. Finny, let's go to you. Major takeaway.
Self-love, for sure, is very, very important. And self-learning, which is also a part of self-love. Because when you do some self-learning, you can answer those questions confidently. You know yourself. It's like, hey, what do you enjoy? And you can have those answers ready. But self-love is also very, very important. But I know it's easier said than done. Being what we do, we get a lot of sticks and stones thrown our way, which will, make us feel sometimes shame in what we do. But it's worth achieving. It's worth getting to that point of having a good amount of self-love in yourself. I saw somebody had said something in the comments about listen and accept to your fans' compliments more. Too often we discount them but internalize insults. And I love that because like it took work for me to get to a point of having enough self-love that the fan acknowledgement, the fan love and compliments outweigh like random criticisms and just like hate. Now those just get easily filtered without no type of feelings or nothing. I'm just like not worried about it. These are the people that I want to acknowledge. These are the people that like the people that are acknowledging me, that are acknowledging us, are the people that we should be acknowledging instead of taking in, you know, the negativity because we don't have enough self-love, and we might be riddled with like insecurities and stuff like that, which is normal and human. But I would definitely say it's worth it. That's the biggest takeaway I got from today, is it's worth it to um, build self-love within yourself.
Thanks so much for that emphasis on the self-love piece. I think we keep coming back to that in this panel, which I love. Laura, final takeaway.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to this profound shout that I want to make about the power that is available to us in being folks that are this embracing and investigative and intentional about our sexuality. So there's a little message in there as well, though, is to stay intentional about your pursuit of pleasure in life. I do sometimes fear that those of us that make a living having sex professionally, be it on camera or with clients, do we lose that access to what we find authentically arousing and what we find authentically pleasurable? Having access to pleasure in that way, the intentional and authentic way, is going to keep us alive. I go back constantly to a wonderful essay, famous essay that all of you know, I don't even need to say it, Audre Lorde's Uses of the Erotic, which is a fabulous manifesto all about how embracing and acknowledging the erotic force inside of us, one that is beyond just sexual drive, it's creation, it's intensity and intentionality, really embracing that is how you lead the most fulfilling life. I go back to that and I read that on the regular. So if there's a piece of literature, a statement that resonates with you, keep it nearby, visit it often.
I love the tangible recommendations that come out of these discussions. Recognizing we do have a little bit of time here and we do have one more Q&A question from the audience. I forget that the audience here is often a combination of those who are professionals in the adult industry and also those wanting to support those professionals. So this space, therapists are present in this space too. So we actually had a question about how may a therapist best understand and support the boundaries that you've established? So I think you can answer that and also answer it maybe more as like, what's one thing you would want therapists supporting you in this industry to know? And we're going to do a rapid fire on this one just because I like to leave a little buffer of time. So let's do like 30 seconds or less. Like, what's the one thing that you would want therapists or support people to know about, helping you promote your boundaries, how to support you in this industry? So this is the hot spot. Let's go ahead and go with Finny.
Oh, I'm
I
not
always
ready.
pick on the person who looks like they're
Not ready. Oh boy. One more time for me. Ask me one more time.
Yes. So just think of it like, what is one advice you would give to therapists who are wanting to support people in this industry?
Keep an open mind. Don't judge. It is a lot, speaking from experience, because I do therapy every other week. It is easier said than done to be transparent about this, what we do, like to be fully transparent about what we do. It took a lot of time to do, but my therapist made me feel comfortable enough to do that because they were so open-minded, and I didn't feel any judgment. So keep an open mind.
I love it. Thanks so much, Finny. Josy, let's go to you next.
I would say the same like Finny and also add to it. When I talk to therapists and they had like, I had the feeling that they're really interested in my person and in my job. and asking like questions that makes me like really feel the interest, that is the point where I really opened myself and was like, okay, he's not just doing his job, he's really interested in what I'm doing to understand where's my problem, how can he help me? I mean, to just give us the feeling of, yeah, of really understand, trying to understand. When I have the feeling that the therapist is really trying to understand me, this is the point where I'm opening up. Yes.
I love it. I don't know if we have any other Ted Lasso fans here, but the quote, be curious, not judgmental, I think represents these past two answers, right? Of like, don't expect that as a therapist, you need to know everything, right? Do your own research when you can, but also have an open mind and be curious because no one life is the same when you're working in this industry. So thank you. Laura, let's go to you next. Advice for therapists.
Yeah, we are just bracing for judgment, whether or not we want to admit that, whether or not we've even admitted it to ourselves. Every time I'm working with a therapist, I hate to say it, I'm bracing for the judgment. I'm like, was there a tone in how you asked that? Why do you need more information about this? Wait, 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 wait. So just bracing for judgment. And, it's a bit of that fight or flight that we don't want to live in forever, but it's a reality. And so some of us really need a very tender, considerate, varied approach to how we tell you about our lives. And, there might need to be a little repair along the way.
I love the point about repair because we've got to recognize a lot of people in this industry have worked with people who have caused harm, have sought out support and resources, and those providers have been judgmental and not curious. They have not had an open mind. So therapists not taking that personally and recognizing that those are wounds from someone else, and we have a responsibility to hold them and be patient and help our people kind of have a corrective experience. So thanks so much for naming that. Leya, let's go with you last because I know this is your baby. So,
Oh,
what
I
advice for
know, the
therapists?
pressure, the pressure. My main point be this is a choice. Being in this industry for many people, not for everybody, for many people, being in this industry is a choice, and that needs to be respected. And I like what you're all saying about being curious, but what I hear again and again and again from folks who sought therapy outside of Pineapple Support before coming to us is that they felt like they were teaching their therapist about the industry. And when somebody is paying you for therapy, you shouldn't be expecting them to give you a lesson. By the time you've explained how the industry works, people aren't left with enough time to actually talk about themselves and what's happening. So if you want to work with people in this industry, take a course. There's plenty out there. We actually promote some on our website that have been written by therapists that we work with. They're not expensive, and it will allow you to treat people with at least a base knowledge of this industry.
Thank you so much. And of course, shouting out all of the resources through Pineapple Support. There are a number of free resources like webinars and workshops that are put on, and then other reasonably priced resources in terms of therapy and support for therapists, corporations, people that want to get more involved in supporting these kind of topics in our work. So with that, thank you so much to our panelists for being here, sharing your stories, sharing your knowledge, and equally thankful to our attendees for being present for this conversation. I hope you have some takeaways. Thank you for your engagement. And with that, Leya, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to wrap us up. We caught you on mute.
Thank you. So as we close the Pineapple Support 2025 Mental Health Summit, I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up with openness, courage, and care, including myself. Across these 3 days, we've explored pleasure, neurodivergence, trauma, embodiment, and healing, all through the lens of sexual education for the sexually educated, and the deep, inseparable connection between the body and the mind. A heartfelt thank you to our presenting sponsor, F2F, and to Pornhub, Reveal Me, Strip Chat, and Night Flirt for making this summit possible. And thank you to every presenter, moderator, and panelists, and of course, everyone that's been in the audience and shared their thoughts as well. Everyone who shared their expertise and lived experience with us. Pineapple Support is entirely donation-led. If you're able to support our work, you can donate at pineapplesupport.org. Every donation helps us continue providing therapy, support groups, and mental health resources to our community. And finally, if anything over these past few days has brought something up for you, please remember that Pineapple Support is here for you. Reach out. Support is available, and you don't have to do this alone. Thank you all for being part of this community. Take care of your bodies, take care of your minds, and take care of each other.